Welcome to the Uplift, where we are uplifting our lives, uplifting each other, and uplifting our communities together. Thank you for joining myself, Cy Herrera, and Tessa Cy here, two women, two attorneys, doing it our way, and inviting you here each week to share in on the stories, advice, and life lessons we've picked up along our journeys that keep us uplifted, and that will hopefully do the very same thing for you. Now buckle in and let's get ready to be uplifted.
Hello, everyone. As always, I'm Tessa, and I'm joined by the fantastically amazing and lovely, and I love every minute that I spend with her, Cy.
Oh, hi Tessa, and I'm excited to be with you always, always, always. And I'm so excited for what we'll talk about today and all the brilliant topics you always come up with.
So, Cy and I had lunch earlier this week, and we had a great conversation. And part of it was this about how we have this expectation, and maybe it's just in America, maybe it's throughout the world, where everything has to be perfect, whether it's when we're going to make decisions, or the decisions that we're making have to be perfect, or the results have to be perfect. And it's just this, and having come through the Texas legislative session, there's always an idea that everybody wants their legislation to be so perfect, and they will cut off their nose to spite their face kind of idea, right? It really had me thinking from our conversation, why do we do this to ourselves? It's like we're setting ourselves up for, like, I don't want I think failure is a good thing, but it's setting ourselves up for disappointment, I think, because we have these high expectations that everything has to
It's
be
like
perfect.
it's like self-torture or something. What's that called? Like
Yes.
sadomasochism, though? Like you just want to punish
Yes.
yourself. Yeah.
And it's just, I find it so frustrating. And even if it's about, like, living your life, and it's not about your professional life, it's, you know, people who think that their homes have to look like they came out of magazines, and
Mm.
everything has to be in its right place, and
Mhm.
your technology has to be the newest and the best. And it's just a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And
it
everything you're
is.
saying makes me think about like you're measuring yourself by somebody else's standard. That's what I keep thinking.
Yes. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Like, even if it's decisions made by how you want to live your life, or the
Hmm.
company you work for, it is how you or that company is viewed, and
Because what
not,
is perfect?
it doesn't exist, I can tell you
Right.
that
Right. Right.
much.
So it has to be whatever you think somebody else believes is
Things.
perfect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a lot of, if so and so thinks, and I think, and then I
It's
think
a
that
whole
they
lot of
think. I mean,
imaginary pressure.
and I think we all rationally know this, but we
Yeah.
never act on our, like, rational
Mm,
minds.
mm,
We still, even though we know better, it has to be perfect. It has to look perfect.
yeah.
Everything. And I
Yeah.
mean, and it's beginning of summertime, so you get all these welcome to
Oh
your
God.
summer body kind of, like, it's everywhere, and it's constant, and it's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
too
The
much.
focus, yeah, the focus on
Yeah.
bodies. I mean, just the focus on bodies alone is just
Just
interesting. It's just an interesting thing to me in general. Like, okay.
like,
Like,
I mean, I'm pretty good about filtering it out, but this week
yeah.
on, I think it was this week on Twitter, where Lizzo posted that it was just too much.
Mm,
They were like, no
mm.
matter
And
what
that's
she did,
real for so
she's
many
going to
people.
be
Yeah.
shamed. And I'm just
Right.
like,
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I say of course
oh,
because it's just like so it's so sadly ridiculously true, that this has just been so ingrained in our culture literally forever. And I actually I there was a really interesting podcast that I listened to that talked about how fat phobia is really entrenched in racism,
of
and it's
course
just a
it
whole other
is.
dynamic of it. And I'm just like, wow, like we just don't even, just like you were talking about with perfectionism, we
Hmm.
don't. even have the bandwidth really to go to a conscious level about this topic,
Yeah.
you know, whether it's perfectionism in body, in money, in home, in family, in relationships, in work. Like, we don't even have the opportunity to take it to a conscientious level because I mean, I just say we're in the struggle, but you know, I mean, we also, like, as human beings, we don't do that. We really operate from this like emotional, intuitive place in our bodies. We really do. And it's I mean, it's just proven out over and over again. As much as we are intellectual, as much as we are, you know, conscientious, it's like all of that really falls to the wayside, like what, 90% of the time or what have you, because we operate on autopilot, right? Like we're operating from this limbic system or what have you. It's we are just we're moving according to our patterns, according to our programming, right? And that's just
Oh,
there.
programming.
And then where does the programming come from, right? It's reinforced. I mean,
Hmm.
it's there for a reason, and it's very intentional in a lot of ways. Sometimes people are programming from their programming, right? But then it's also reinforced, reaffirmed, you know, even punished sometimes. Like, I mean, you're really groomed. You're groomed throughout your life. And even now, you know, we are women. We are now of a certain age. We're not children, but we are still feeling the forces of society all the time. And it's undeniable in that way, but yet it's so quiet. It's so
It
interesting
is.
that, like, it's so powerful and so quiet that we don't even know that it's really happening, and we can t stop and think about it, but
Hmm.
in your everyday actions and your everyday reactions, it's mostly reactions. That's to me is the core of the issue, is we're mostly reacting to other people's kind of cues, to their bait kind of, you know, to their prompts, if you will.
And their insecurities and
Mm,
the rules that somebody else made up that are
mhm,
either, I think, as you definitely point out, racist or sexist or homophobic or all the bad things.
mhm.
That's why they're there. And it's just like, why do we keep doing this to ourselves?
I don't know, but
I
we have to
know,
break away.
right?
We
We
have to break away,
do.
and so the only, you know, the only idea that even comes to my mind, and that's why I'm so glad we're talking about it today, is to first call it by name. Like, for me, it's just like all the other kinds of abuse that exist in the world, you know, it thrives in you not paying attention to it. It thrives in you not looking directly at it, right? It thrives when it's in darkness. It thrives when people are not being conscious about it because it operates in that space of knee jerk, you know, in
Hmm.
reaction, in emotion. That's where it thrives. And so for me, this is actually really important of a practice where we stop and literally just look at it and name it and recognize it and then have empathy for each other and our humanity that, oh yeah, we all get wrapped up in that because it's real. It's a real force of nature. It's a real force of society anyways, right? And and then what we do beyond that, I think, is, you know, it has to do with being conscientious and finding ways to put it into practice, put our pausing and our thoughtfulness and our consciousness into practice so that we're not always just reacting.
I think you raise a really interesting point because it's not only our reaction to our own self and our own actions, but
Mhm.
because these choices that are causing all this pressure on us are how we are viewed by others, it is also us having those kind of judgments on others that kind of
Mm.
reinforces this vicious cycle, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm not perfect, so I'm going to judge people who are also not perfect. And I'm going to be
Mm.
vocal and I'm
I'm
going to be mean about it. And
yes. I'm a
yeah,
little less imperfect than they are, though, so that makes me feel good. Or
right.
I'm not imperfect in that way, which is even a worse thing to be imperfect in, right? Ay, ay, ay. That part.
Yeah. I mean, and I know we're all guilty of it on some level, but there are
Mhm.
some people who are just, you know, it is a lot and it is intense and it is.
Mhm.
I think about all the um, kind of outing that has occurred of
Mm,
Instagram influencers with all their like
mhm.
editing of their photos and everything. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, and think of all the young kids and probably adults too that are, trying to mimic a person who
Right.
is essentially not real, right? Like
Right.
what you
Yeah.
see is not actual reality. But so
Right.
many people will buy whatever they're showing because, oh wow, I could be like that.
Yeah. And the new standard that gets, we've talked about this, the new standard it gets changed to that place of I mean, it's basically fantasy, but it's the most dangerous kind because it's not being presented as fantasy. And so it's literally being, it makes me think that like this kind of maybe started even with reality TV, right? Because
Oh
this
yeah.
idea, like I mean, literally has the word reality in it. But it's being presented as like, oh no, this is real. This
hmm
is what's really happening in people's lives. And like you had no idea like 10 minutes ago, but now you know that there are people living like this. This is, the kind of car they drive. This is how they look. This is what they wear. This is what they buy. And I mean, we by human nature, like we're compelled to compare. Like that's what we do. And I'm as I'm talking about it, I'm striving I'm seeking opportunities to just replace this negative, almost, reactionary emotion with something positive because in my practice I find that's the only way, right? Because we can't necessarily change our instinctual or natural kind of reaction to things or our first emotion to them. But I do believe that we can replace, that initial thought. Like we can overcome it with conscientious, intentional thought of some other order. And so for me, when I'm thinking about that experience, and I know that everyone listening has experienced it. I know that that has to be the case. I know I'm not the only one who looks
Oh,
at,
you're definitely
all of
not the
this.
only one. I'm right there with you.
And I mean, I can't even be on social media for I mean, I definitely take it in waves because I mean, it's just real. Like I can feel in myself, thankfully at least now. I think so many people in general, one of the issues is that they don't even sense because we're not necessarily always connected with our body, and I'm by no means perfect at that in any way. There is no perfection. But the practice of getting more and more connected with yourself and your emotions is such an important one because if you're not, so many people are going through and taking in all of the stimuli and it's hurting them and they don't even feel the hurt necessarily until it builds to like, this big threshold.
Ugh,
And then it's too late, right? And
yeah.
or I shouldn't say it's too late. I just want to say it's doing so much harm at that moment. Um, whereas if you could sense it earlier, maybe you could try to protect yourself in ways or even, just literally cut it off so that you don't get to that level of damage, which is
hmm
generally what I try to do, even with news consumption, as we've spoken about with social media. I mean, all of it is just really interesting the way that it impacts a spirit. It really does do that, and we know that that's true. I mean, there's data now, but noticing it in yourself, I feel like is one of those practices that everyone, might wanna strive for because everybody is impacted differently, but if you know yourself, then you know what's right for you. So that's the first thing, and then what about, what can we say or what can we think or what we can use to replace the initial reactions that come forth. And I think there's a lot that we could do, but it has to be something we really believe in order for it to work.
I think you raised a really good point about being intentional and how we think about things and intentional in what we consume. And I have started just unfollowing people and
Mhm.
unfollowing entities that if I don't like their message, I don't want it in my feed.
Mhm. Yep.
And I become a hmm, very, I wouldn't say rabid football fan, like world football, not American football. But
Mhm.
I have a I watch a lot more football than I ever thought I would. And
Mm.
in that, there's supporter groups. So at the beginning of my football experience, I started following, supporter groups for our local Austin FC. Well, it's those people who were very supportive in year one and then became very critical, and that criticism just keeps growing. I'm like, nope. You know, like this idea that a team didn't win, so well, you therefore must fire the coach and fire everybody
Mm.
because nobody's allowed to make a mistake. I'm just like, nope, unfollow.
Yeah.
But I think it's a prime example of what's going on, right? Like, here's a group that is has a great love of the sport, but whenever there's an error or something that isn't perfect, it
Mm.
is clear the board. And I think it's the same thing in a lot of people's lives, right? Like, well, I fucked that up, so I'm going to just get rid of everything and start anew.
Mm. Mhm.
Or I or a business that makes one wrong decision. Oh, I'm going to just
Mhm.
change the entire organization. And it's like this, everything has become like a
Like, they
cancel
must be
culture.
canceled, yes.
Yes, and it's always
We've been
all or
talking a lot
nothing.
about this around Pride because it's real, like, people are
Yes.
coming in hot already, and we're like, "Okay. Let's think about it, let's talk about it, you know? Let's slow down a
Because it's
little bit, let's not throw everyone away."
that, and also, I mean, representation matters. And
Mm.
I don't, it's not, in my mind, a good choice to just run and hide from all the bad people, even though that's what we want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it comes from a place, obviously, of trauma. We were
Oh,
talking about this with
yeah,
another group where it's like, of course, like, that's a total trauma response, a valid trauma response is,
absolutely
"I
valid.
don't wanna have anything to do with these people," and that's that's just valid, like, you can't even argue that. It's like, okay, that makes sense as a reaction,
Hmm.
right? But again, it's about reaction versus very intentional, conscientious thought, right? And frankly, what comes after trauma in my mind at this point in my life, my reaction, my practice is there's trauma and then there's trauma healing now. Like, I'm excited to know that there's another step, right? And it's not just you live with trauma and then die with it like that, like we usually do.
Oh, wouldn't that be awful?
Well, it's awful, but it's so true. I mean, that's
It
literally
is.
the truth for every generation before mine, frankly. Like,
Yeah.
that's it. Like, that's our reality. That's my entire lineage, and I think so many others is just I mean, up until this point, I don't know that trauma healing was a real thing, and I still, wonder how far can we take it? Like, how much can we undo? How far can we go? How in this, like, generation, right? Because it's like, you're sitting in a whole lineage, and you're wondering, like, "How much can I change in my lifetime?" Basically, and what's really interesting about this generation that I love so much is that we're taking it on ourselves to improve as individuals, like, first, and not that it has to be an individualistic thing, but, like, we're all taking I shouldn't say all, but as a group, we're bringing in this significance, this thought that it's valuable for us to be working on our healing, and that because we know the impact that it can have on, the others around us and also, I mean, for the wider society. So, trauma healing is what's next, and what's really the most difficult thing about what we're talking about right now, which is, people having this instinct to cancel, right? This instinct to cut out, this instinct to say, "Nope, we got you. We see who you are. We don't wanna have anything to do with you." I get it. I've done it. I've been with it, and I wonder if, you know, I I don't think that there's a clear answer. Like, I don't even wanna tell people, "You shouldn't do that." I can't tell people that. All I can say is that we can't cut our way to complete progress, right? Like, we want something different. We want a different world. We want things to change, and I know, I know, like, it was just such a few short years ago where so many of us were like, "It's all or nothing." We have to be this, and if you're not this, just get out of the way, right? And I get that because I wanna move fast too. I am an impatient millennial, like, that's who I am. I love that for us, really. I relate to that, like, that's just real. But I just wonder, how can we get to a place where we even overcome that to a point where we can say, okay, this person is not ready to join, the fight. They're not in it. Maybe
Hmm.
we don't, you know, we don't put all of our time and energy there. That's fair. But
Or they fight in a
when you
different way.
cast people out, yeah, like I mean the problem is like, I don't know, like we in our talk, Tessa, we were even talking about how we practice radical empathy, and we can see that when there are really bad things that happen in the world, people do really bad things. Like, I think we were talking even about like serial killers, right? We're like, you
Hmm.
can't say anything good about that. That's terrible in every single way, obviously. But for us, in our larger thinking of it all, it occurs to us anyways that, you know, this is not just an individual issue. This is a societal issue. This is about, sometimes about child abuse. This is about so many
Hmm.
different things that we as a society do impact and can have a difference be made. And so that's why I say, as an individual, some people seem like they're just deplorable. And why would we spend any time on them whatsoever? And the only progress that I've made in that thought process is maybe I will not spend time there yet, but I would think about how can we as a society improve on things so that nobody has to get to this place where they feel so hurt that they have to hurt other people, that they feel so traumatized that they have to inflict trauma on others, that they feel so out of control that they have to control others through legislation and through whatever means of power that they have. Like, those are the questions now where I'm at a place of, okay, radical empathy is understanding that individuals are not just individuals on their own, island, becoming a good person or a bad person, right? We're all in it together. And even if we can't, make an ally out of an enemy right now, if you will, it doesn't mean we can't improve things overall to make it so that, we might be able to get there together regardless of where we started.
Thinking about how the different forms of improvement that can occur. And I think so many
Mm,
think it needs to be on this grand scale, but it can be
mhm.
just as simple as having a conversation with your neighbor or
Yes.
with your friend who might be experiencing something that they're not recognizing,
Mm.
or just just as simple as just talking about it with each other, right? Like,
And the power you have, that's the other thing we talked a
yeah.
little bit about because, if I talk to your friend, they don't know me from Bob. They don't care what I'm saying. I mean, I can preach to
Hmm.
them all day and with all the passion in the world, and they'll be like, "Uh-huh." But if you say it, it might mean something because they know that you care about them
Yep.
and they might respect you and admire you, which I'm sure they do if they know you. And and they might take your opinion more seriously than they would any, random pundit on TV or random other person that they meet in life or, definitely more so than some person who has been painted as the enemy or has been painted as the other team or has been painted as canceled, right? Like if you
Hmm.
have someone's ear, you have power.
And I think we should use it, right? I
Mhm.
know my Gen X people are known for our, mm, I don't know if it's necessarily apathy, but it looks like apathy, right? Like,
Mm.
it's our trauma reaction to the boomers
Mhm.
who brought us into this world. Who are like,
Mm.
yeah, I'm just going to shut down and not give
Mhm.
a shit. because
Yeah.
that's how we
I
handle
got a
things.
touch of that. I got definitely got a touch of that. Okay, that makes sense. I hear that.
but, but I think we've all gotten, at least the younger Gen Xers have gotten a lot better about accepting that there is trauma and that we need to heal from the trauma and giving words to what we're experiencing. And
Mhm.
I like to think that we are slowly seeing change where we accept imperfection, we will talk about it, and we will provide comfort for others who are going through it so that they know, hey, you're not alone, right? Because sometimes that's all you need to know is that you're not
Mm,
alone in
yes.
thinking that the world had to be perfect and mine is not. And now I'm a total and utter abject failure, which is not true. But, you know, the rules of the game in society have made us believe that if we haven't, I'm trying to think of things that like the unwritten rules that were
Mm,
put upon women, like in college, like you needed to be married before you were, I don't know, 25 and have children before 30. And
mm,
like, that is prime career time. So that seems a little
mhm.
weird. Or, I read something about how a lot of women were raised to think they had to do it all, right? So like they're
Mhm.
having amazing careers, but then they're coming home and being 100% responsible for the household. Like,
Mm,
no, 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 no. No, 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 no,
mhm.
no, no, no. There needs to be some equity and fairness in households.
Yeah,
But that's not the view that society had placed upon us. So that's not what we thought needed to occur. And let me tell
right.
you, equity and parity, which I am very fortunate to have in my household, is a godsend. And it should be how it always is because, everybody should do what everybody excels at. And there's always a way to divide and conquer
Mhm.
any project, whether it's at home or elsewhere.
Yeah. And I mean, even that part, it's like, what you see is what you know.
Hmm.
And what's really interesting about the house is you don't really get a lot of, you don't get a lot of spoken out loud instruction on that, right? It's like there's some things that we learn in school or whatever. Like there's different ways that
Right?
people explicitly teach us things and we're like, okay, that's acceptable, but and it applies, in the outside world. But the home is such a special private place for so many
Hmm.
and I mean I just it dawns on me it's so interesting how like there is no home ec. Like I didn't have home ec. And it was a thing at some point, right? Where it was like this weird in my mind now it's weird because it that wasn't my experience, but it's like there was this intersection of like home and formal education, if you will, right? Like the public private kind of thing merged there. We don't have that anymore, so it's really interesting. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I just find it interesting, and I wonder what that means. Like, what are we left with? And it seems to me children would just literally take on whatever they see in their household and apply that unless something intervenes. So what is that intervening factor? And for me, like you talk about equity and parity in your work in your home, and for me, like that, the only reason I would even have that mindset really would be obviously what I've seen in my home, any parts that influenced me in that way, but for anything that was missing or wanting, it would just be like the concepts that I learned about women's liberation and equal rights and like all of that stuff on a political level where I mean sometimes they talk about it for sure in the movement, um but not so much explicitly like it's not really like usually one of those like big high level items. I mean we were fighting a lot for bodily autonomy, voting, just like, being able to not be discriminated against in the workplace or sexually harassed, like basic things.
And I will confess that I did not learn the concept of equity and parity in a household in the
Mm-hmm.
United States. I learned it from my
Mm,
cousins and aunts and uncles in Sweden, where it
mm,
actually exists, where it is not, in a heterosexual couple, it is not uncommon for men to cook and to clean and to do basic household chores, to go to the grocery store. Whereas here it's like, at least when I went to high school, it was like, oh my word, the husband was at the grocery store. The world must be falling apart. Like, no, no, it's not. It's just let's be normal human beings. And
mm.
to a great extent, I think it is because they have policies where there is paternal leave and there's paternity leave, and men
Mm,
do not think of taking care of their children as babysitting. It's just
correct.
called being a parent.
Right.
And they have the good fortune of having a government that supports that.
That's
Here, I
interesting. Yeah.
if
That's
right,
interesting.
like,
Like the kind of like top down almost. But is it top
yeah,
down or is it like the culture is there and so the government reflects back the culture? I don't really know,
I,
but that's interesting.
I would say it's probably the culture, and the government reflects the culture because
Mm,
it traces back historically to like Viking times, where there were some men who stayed back and didn't go into battles and war, and there were
mhm.
women who went into battles and war and were great warriors. And
Wow.
so there was never this like defined
Division
gender
on the
role.
sex line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And to be fair, in Sweden, by dictate of the government and church, a man cannot walk his daughter down the aisle because women are not chattel. So a woman walks herself down the aisle. And I think
Nice.
that is just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, and it's amazing and it's very different than our
Yeah,
inherited culture here, right? And so
absolutely.
we have to recognize that like we are all products of the water that we swim
Oh, yeah.
in. And so that's what I mean by, hearing something different. Maybe this is different for people, maybe it's not, but hearing it even I think is interesting because I mean, what informs us on this thing, right? I mean, this is an interesting thing. I mean, we could even talk about it in relation to like what does a perfect relationship look like and all of that, right? But it's like, what does that look like for you? Like, what do you want your relationship to be? And
Hmm.
are you really getting what you deserve? And what how do you determine what you're worthy of or what you deserve or what you even want, right? Because that's what I find really intriguing about it all is that, you know, the people who are in these maybe, expectations, right? They're living out these expectations like you were talking about where some would feel like they have to do it all. Um, the most interesting part to me about all of that, about anything like that, is the fact that it doesn't really occur to people that they should want something different. That's
Right.
the most fascinating part to me because and it has so much to do with what you're exposed to, right? And
Hmm.
like and that's why it's so inspiring to see people who have a different mindset, who have a different theory in life, right? Who have a different whole ideology in ways. And when you see it, then you're like, "Oh, maybe that's what I want. Maybe that's what I should have,
Right.
right?" But if you don't see it, you don't know. And that's what I'm saying is like in Sweden, like you're seeing this example that is just there for you to
Hmm.
digest and for you to incorporate into your practice and into your mindset. Um, but for so
And
many people who didn't, then what do they have, right?
I think I have a responsibility to talk about it to
Mhm.
the people that I interact with, and it it comes up naturally. Like, I don't want to go around proselytizing or anything. I just want
Right.
people to know that there's another way, that the
Yeah.
expectations that are placed upon us in American society, as you pointed out, were made up by people who we probably don't agree with in today's society. So, let's talk about changing them. Let's talk about what's perfect for us as opposed to what is, say, objectively perfect, because that
Yeah.
does not exist. But what is perfect for us can exist, and we can define it however we want.
Yeah. And it seems like it's so much harder to have that kind of conversation or even have that different change. I know we're just using this one thing as an example, but overall, generally, like when we talk about, perfectionism, um, what you think is perfect or what you know is perfect for you as you're even, changing what in your mind is perfect for you as you grow. Um, there's a friction, right? There's a friction between that idea, that concept that you're discovering for yourself and what society expects, right,
Hmm.
of you, whatever society you're sitting in. And if it doesn't align, if what you envision for yourself does not align with the societal norms, how do you overcome that, right? Like, how do you decide that you're going to do it, first of all, and how do you actually do it? And the reason why this is coming to mind for me is, there's so many things as an individual that I can just decide, like, I'm doing this. I'm
Yeah.
pursuing this. I don't have to tell anybody. Like, I'll do whatever the hell I want, right? And I love
Hmm.
that. That's great. I get that opportunity, and it's so good in so many ways, in so many circumstances. But what about when it involves other people? It's actually a lot trickier because now you have to convince them of a vision that is counter to the culture that prevails, right? So, like, what if
Yeah.
you have to convince your partner when your partner has been swimming in this water where this is the way things have always been, right? Or maybe you have to convince your parents, like, hey, this is what I want for me. And it's so different than what, society has been telling us is what we should all want for me. I wonder about those parts, and I sense that that would be the hardest part of the struggle, the hardest part for folks to overcome, because perfection is, again, this idea that society is imposing on us.
I think it comes down to what everything comes down to, which is communication, right? Like, how do we effectively communicate and explain why it is important either to us or why we think it's important to our ecosystem, whether it's our home life or our professional life or whoever our audience might be. Uh, Our communication tends to be very much, I think this is, I don't even know, we probably don't say I think. It should be like this, period. But
Mhm.
what people need to understand is the why, right? Like, why
Mm,
is it important? Why can this take us on the path
mm,
that we want to, whether it's individually or for a couple or for a
mhm.
community or for an entity? It's just taking that moment to connect
Yeah,
the dots for them, right? Because not every,
yeah.
people are not mind readers. And I know this is shocking, but I have become,
Sometimes we
as
want
I
them
grow,
to be. Yeah.
we do, we
Expect them
do.
to be.
But as I've grown older, I've realized, you know what? There's not really a problem with over communicating, especially
Right.
when you're trying to like
Yes.
move forward, right? Like,
Yes. Or
explain
change something
things.
that is not, yeah, the
Yeah.
status quo. Like, if you want something different, you're gonna have to
Mm-hmm.
explain that. You're gonna have to really be persuasive, right? And I love that you said
Right.
over communication, because that has been like the thing that helps me actually do a better job with it. Because for me, I'm like, oh, I just have to like give people a sense of, like, I mean, that was my mistake, is that I would think like, oh, my work speaks for itself. Like, I had all of these concepts in my head of like,
Mm-hmm.
I will show them, I don't know why, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it's because I really think it has a lot to do with our culture of like individual rugged individualism and meritocracy, and it's like, oh, the work speaks for itself. It's very proud. It's a very prideful thing, right? But I literally have to tell myself over communicate just to get to a place where I'm actually communicating, if that makes sense. Like, for
It,
me,
yeah.
I have to hear that, like, it's this extreme thing. Like, I have to do this extreme thing because for me, it is extreme. Like, it's extreme to be telling people in detail what I expect. Um, Oh
But how
God,
are they
it's
going
it's
to
actually bringing
know?
up so much stuff. It's bringing up stuff for me, Tesla. It really is because, I'm such a collaborative person. I want to like include people. I want like for me that's being good. That's being a good
Hmm.
person is like involving everyone, including everybody, making everyone feel like they belong and that their opinions are important. And so like communicating what I actually expect and want. It feels like to me, it feels like I am taking up a lot of the space. I am taking up a lot of the, what's important. And to me, that feels like I'm shutting other people out or devaluing even what they care about by taking up space. And I keep saying that because I think or what I'm gleaning from all of this is that I must have been programmed to shrink myself and not take up space and make
Mm.
space for others, right? And so it's just wild that, like, for me, I have to, in order to convince myself to do something that is just really healthy, right? Like what you're talking about is healthy communication, right? But
Hmm.
I don't think about it that way. I think about it like this is this extreme thing that I have to do. I have to do it just so
Yeah.
that I can make things work, right? And so in my mind, to convince my body, my programming to do it, I have to say, you must over communicate. You have to over communicate. Isn't that fascinating?
That is fascinating. But if we put our logical hats up for a little while,
Mm-hmm.
we also know that if we don't over communicate, people are going to understand what our expectations may be, even when our expectations are these great things where we want people to be their best selves.
Mm-hmm.
And without, otherwise, I think we have, say, we're working in a team and and you want to communicate your expectations to them. If we don't do that, the team members will think, I need to come up with an answer that makes Cynthia
Mm-hmm.
happy, as opposed to I need to come up with an answer that I think is the correct answer for this problem. And there's a
Yes.
difference, right? There's a
Yes.
disconnect there. And
Yes.
we have
And
to
they might
set
be satisfying something you don't even want. Yeah, like they're gonna like you. It's
correct,
not even what you want. Like they might make trying to make you happy, and it actually isn't at all what you want. Like you might want them to be finding the problems. Like
correct,
that might literally be like you don't want to be happy. You want to know where the threats are. You want to know
right.
where the fires are coming from, right? Like you want to know that, and
Hmm.
somebody might be like, oh, they only want to hear good news. That's something that I've really been picking up and even our with ourselves. I'm like, we are showing all the good stuff and being like, look at all this wonderful thing, all these wonderful things that we're doing. Look at all this wonderful progress that we're making. But we're in the strategic planning process at Ashwell, and we've been talking about the fact that, well, yeah, we want people to know all of the work that we're doing and all the good things that we're doing and how we're on this great path, but we're actually going to them to ask us how we can improve. And if there's nothing to improve on, like what? They're not going to come up with anything. Like if we're just showing them, here's all the great stuff. Like I'm like, we have to start showing the problems. We have to start showing them the hard stuff. We have to start showing them the questions that we don't know how to answer. Because if we don't, like, what value are they going to be able to give us? What like they're not going to even know the question, let alone how they should answer. So,
See, and
it's so true.
as you explained that, all I could think in my head was they're not problems, they're opportunities, right?
Exactly.
And so
Well,
for me,
completely right.
it's
Yeah,
it's the communication again, right? Because are
exactly.
we communicating to our team that we have problems, or are we communicating to our teams about opportunities? Which I think people, I would hope, would be more interested in communicating with the people you're asking for help if you speak to them in terms of opportunities, right? Because they
Absolutely.
would, and it's just all this words matter. And it's so incredible how the way we phrase things can have the impact, right? Like,
Oh
are the
yeah.
words we're
Framing
using,
is everything I say all the time.
right?
It
Are we
really is.
framing our trauma,
Mhm.
or are we
Mhm.
framing our trauma healing?
Mhm. Mhm. And the other thing with framing is that it's a matter like to your point, it's about what you're trying to communicate. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I sense is, when people are really anxious or worried about something like problems, they frame it as such because they're afraid. And it's
Yeah.
like that they're, when they frame it that way, they're really like passing on that fear and anxiety,
Yeah.
which is not the best place for us to make decisions in my calculation of things, right? So it really is important. It really is important how you communicate and the approach, right, and the energy that you bring to that communication. I really believe that because every time I'm speaking to people, I speak to so many people, especially in my work, that come with this almost like not to say anything about anyone specific, it's just literally like I have so many conversations where I catch, and I'm sure I do the same thing, like, and people catch me and I love it. um but I'm always like, oh, you just said that you are, I don't know, you're failing, or this is going to probably turn out really badly, or like there's no chance, whatever, like all of these negative things. And I'm like, all of those things you can literally turn on a dime. Like if you
Yep.
say, we're probably not going to do it, you can say, I mean, you could turn it around and say, well, this is what we're planning on doing, and this is our approach to doing it, and we have a shot. Like, I mean, you could change anything. You can reframe literally anything, and I love doing it because it's so funny to see people's faces when they're like, like just kind of like defeated already, right? It's like in their language, you can tell they've already lost. And when you reframe it as, oh no, we might win this thing, it changes everything internally and externally. It's wild. The framing is so powerful.
I want to step back and look from a higher level, thinking about all those decisions that we're making in either our lives or our businesses or in our relationships. And you know what? None of those decisions have to be final.
You
None of
thank
them,
you. Oh, I love calling,
right?
and this is another way to frame things. I love calling it a working
Hmm.
budget, a working goal,
Yep.
a working theory. Everything is working, honey. There's nothing that is
Oh,
at
yeah.
rest.
We
It is
can
working.
adapt, we can pivot, we can
Yep.
move in a different direction. Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of part of that whole perfection idea. Like
Yep. 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 Because
every
it's final.
decision,
It's final. Is your
yes,
house perfect yet? Is it perfect now? Or is it,
right.
like it's literally a finality of like, this is not a
Yeah.
journey, this is a destination. And that's the framing is actually, yes, the framing is key.
And I mean, I think that's kind of the takeaway from today, right? Like,
Mm,
let's remember that one, perfection does not exist. We define it for ourselves,
yes.
and it can change on a dime, and there is no harm and no foul in changing, pivoting, adapting,
Hmm.
whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
It is
What's
good
perfect for
and it
you
is
right
growth.
now? Yes.
Yeah. And I hope everybody takes away this idea that we have power to make these decisions, right? And we have power
Yeah.
to see how they work for us. And it is okay if that changes in 5 minutes, in 5 years, in 50 years.
And it's
Just
going to
allow yourself.
change. We got to
Yes.
destigmatize the whole thing because it's going to change. This is, I kind of,
Yes.
I kind of like adapting this new thing of like talking about the eras because we all have different eras in our life. And it's like, maybe there was an era in your life when all you wanted to do was like buckle down, get those grades, get those degrees, whatever. That's great. That was your like, you're grinding it out era, whatever it was. But like, you can have a whole different experience right now in this part of your life, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And you're worthy of it. There's no reason
Yeah.
why you shouldn't have whatever phase of life you want to have, whatever experience in life you want to have, whatever era you want to have right now in your life. You deserve it. You're worthy of it. And literally, don't let anybody tell you that that shouldn't be the era that you're living right now. This is your story. This is yours. This is your life. Do whatever the hell you want. That's what I would love to say about perfectionism. Is do
And
whatever
I
the
think
hell you want.
that is the perfect note to leave everybody with is just do what you want and do
Do
what makes you
what you want.
happy, right?
Yes.
As remember that all the rules that you think exist,
Yeah.
they were made up by somebody else.
Yep.
So do what you want.
Yes, make up your own rules. Don't have any rules if you don't
Yes,
want them. I mean,
correct.
I love it. I'm so
Absolutely.
excited for this, and I'm glad that we had this conversation. It makes me feel great about today. I'm gonna do whatever I want. I'm so excited.
Exactly. And let's
And
all
I hope
do
you are
whatever we
too.
want today.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Tessa. We love you.
As
We love everything about you. And we hope you do whatever you want today that brings you joy.
Absolutely. And thank you. And I love all of y'all. And I hope that we all do whatever we want to do today and tomorrow too.
That's right. All right. Stay uplifted, y'all. Bye bye.
Bye.